I want to talk about the office, the actual office, the building, the thing your manager keeps sending you emails about, the thing they keep saying we need to come back to because culture. I want to talk about why they really want us there, and it is not the reason they put in the email. Look, I was in a meeting about this last year. I am not going to say where. The CEO, a guy in his 60s, perfectly nice in the polite sense, was talking to a room of mostly 30 and 40-somethings about how we need to be in the office 4 days a week starting next quarter. The reasons he gave were the usual ones: collaboration, mentorship, culture, building the next generation of leaders. He used the word energy twice. He said magic happens when people are in the room together. He said it with the same expression a guy uses when he is selling you a timeshare. The meeting ended. Everyone in the room, every single person under 50, knew what had actually been said. Nothing about collaboration, nothing about culture. He was telling us that the building he had a 30-year lease on, the building he had personally championed 3 CFOs ago when remote work was science fiction, was empty. And his empty building was an embarrassment. And his commercial real estate friends were watching their portfolios collapse. And he had spent his entire career managing humans by walking by their cubicles and seeing them at their cubicles. And he did not know how to manage humans any other way. And admitting that was unthinkable. And so the building had to fill back up regardless of whether the building made the work any better, which it does not, which everybody under 50 in that room already knew, which the data already says. That was the meeting. The honest version of the meeting was 9 words long. The version we got was 40 minutes. I want to tell you what is actually happening with return to office, because I think the conversation in the news mostly misses it. And I think Gen Z especially is getting hit with it now in your first jobs. And I want you to know what it is before you internalize the wrong story about it. The office is not a piece of management philosophy. It was never a piece of management philosophy. The office is a piece of real estate. It is a building. The building was bought or leased by companies that needed somewhere to put workers before laptops and the internet existed. Then laptops and the internet existed. Then a pandemic forced us to test at planetary scale whether the building was actually necessary for the work to get done. And the answer came back very fast, surprisingly cleanly, that for most knowledge work, the work most of us do, the building was not necessary. The work happened. In many cases, the work happened better. Productivity went up. Burnout went down for a minute. People got time back. People moved cities and saw their kids and stopped commuting. Nothing collapsed. What collapsed was the value of the buildings. The buildings, owned by a specific class of people, pension funds, private equity, large landlords, REITs, plus a lot of individual boomer-era executives who personally invested in commercial real estate as a retirement strategy. Those buildings stopped generating return. Empty cubicles do not pay rent. And so a story started getting written. A story that said the workers were the problem. That we were less productive at home. That we were quiet quitting. That we were burning out from too much flexibility somehow. That mentorship had collapsed and Gen Z was suffering for it. That the culture of companies was vanishing into Slack channels and nobody was learning anything anymore. That young people specifically need to be in the office to develop. The story was published in dozens of major business outlets. It is still being published. It will be published next week. The data does not support the story. The data, where companies bother to share it, mostly shows that remote and hybrid workers are at least as productive as in-office workers, often more, with better mental health outcomes and lower attrition. The Gen Z needs the office to develop claim, which I want to address directly in a minute, is almost entirely vibes. Nobody has shown it. They have asserted it. There is a difference. What is true is that empty buildings are worth less than full buildings. What is true is that a 30-year commercial lease is a millstone if nobody is in the office. What is true is that the executives who built their entire managerial identity around walking the floor have no second act if there is no floor to walk. What is true is that a generation of leaders who learn management as be at your desk by 8 and let me see you at it do not have a toolkit for managing outputs instead of bodies. They never developed it. They did not have to. They were promoted by other men who managed the same way. Return to office isn't a productivity argument. It's a real estate argument and a management skill argument dressed up in productivity language. Now I want to address the Gen Z needs the office part specifically. because it has been the most weaponized version of this argument, and I want it dismantled cleanly. The claim, when you boil it down, is this: young workers need to be physically present to learn. They need mentorship that can only happen in person. They need to overhear conversations. They need to be visible. They need to build relationships face to face. If they are at home, they will miss out on career development. They will not advance. They will be stuck. I want to grant the small piece of this that is true, so I can take apart the rest of it. There are aspects of work that are easier in person. Brainstorming with a whiteboard, onboarding in the first week of a job, building rapport with someone new, the occasional moment where you overhear something useful in the kitchen. These are real. I am not pretending they are not. Some hybrid arrangements let people be together for a couple of days a month for specific things that make sense, and most workers will tell you so directly if you ask. That is not what the return to office mandate is. The return to office mandate is 4 or 5 days a week, permanent, often with surveillance software measuring keystrokes, often with badge swipe tracking, often with the threat of termination for noncompliance. That is not flexibility. That is not in for the meetings that I need it. That is the full restoration of the 1985 office, with one important difference, which is that they kept the surveillance technology that the pandemic accelerated, so now the 1985 office has 2025 tracking attached to it. The worst of both eras. And the Gen Z thing. The idea that Gen Z specifically needs this for mentorship. I want to be direct. The people making this argument are mostly Boomer or Gen X executives who personally did not mentor anyone effectively in person either. The mentorship they remember from their own early careers was often sitting near someone for years and being slowly socialized into a corporate culture. The in-person mentorship of the 1980s and 1990s produced the executive class we have now. Look at it. That is the product of in-person mentorship. We do not actually need more of that. We need a different kind, and we need it explicitly designed, not absorbed by osmosis, at a cubicle next to a guy named Steve. Gen Z does not need to be in the office to be mentored. Gen Z needs to be mentored. Those are different sentences. The first is a building requirement. The second is a leadership requirement. The leadership has been told to do the second and has chosen instead to mandate the first, because the first is easier to enforce by email. You can mandate attendance. You cannot mandate mentorship. Guess which one they're choosing. Okay, the bigger frame. The thing I really wanted to say. This is the part I've been thinking about for 2 years and have not figured out how to articulate cleanly until recently. We are at the beginning of the next industrial revolution. Not the one with the steam engines. The one with the laptops and the AI and the asynchronous global workforce and the dissolution of the physical office as the central unit of economic activity. This shift has been coming for 30 years. The pandemic accelerated it by about a decade. Workers, millions of us, got a glimpse of what the next version of work could actually look like. Less commuting, more time, more flexibility, more autonomy, more ability to live where we want, care for the people we love, and structure our days around being human instead of around being convenient to a building somebody else owns. This is what I want you to understand. The return to office push is not a neutral business decision. It is a regressive political project. It is the same class of people who killed the pension, who deregulated the wage, who eliminated job security, who replaced employees with contractors, now trying to recapture the one piece of leverage they have left, which is physical control over where you spend your day. Industrial revolutions get resisted. They always get resisted. The Luddites smashed the looms because the looms were taking their jobs. The horse and carriage manufacturers fought the car for years. The newspaper industry fought the internet. Every time a new model of work appears, the people whose power depended on the old model fight to keep the old model alive. Sometimes they fight for decades. Sometimes they win for a while. The horse and carriage industry lost. The newspaper industry was hollowed out. The Luddites went home. What is happening with return to office is the same pattern. A class of people whose entire identity, fortune, and managerial power is built on the office is fighting to make sure the office survives, regardless of whether the office serves the work. They're not stupid. They know the future does not include the office in the form they want it. They just want to extract as much value as they can from the old form before the new form fully arrives. They want to make their tenants pay through 2035 on leases signed in 2008. They want their middle managers to keep believing the floor walk is leadership. They want to delay the inevitable for one more cycle, because that one more cycle is the rest of their working lives, and after that, the world can be whatever it needs to be. We are at the start of the next industrial revolution. They are not going to stop it. They're going to slow it until their leases expire. Don't accept the delay as permanent. Gen Z, I want to talk to you specifically for a minute because you are catching the worst version of this. Older millennials negotiated remote work into a lot of jobs during 2020 and 2021. Some of us still have it. You are arriving into a labor market that is being deliberately reversed, where the entry-level jobs are now mandated in office, where the surveillance software is mandatory, where the badge swipes are tracked, and where the older workers around you who got the flexible arrangements are being held up as the reason you cannot have any. I do not want you to internalize the message that you are missing some workplace virtue your predecessors had. You are not. You are being targeted by a regressive labor policy that uses your career as a rhetorical cover for a real estate problem. The argument that you specifically need the cubicle is not coming from a place of concern for your development. It is coming from a desk in a 54th floor corner office where someone has been doing the math on a half-empty building for 2 years and has decided that filling it with 23-year-olds is more politically defensible than admitting the building is obsolete. You can negotiate against this. You can ask for hybrid in the interview. You can ask for outcome-based metrics instead of presence-based ones. You can take the company that gives you flexibility over the company that pays $5,000 more but requires 4 days in office. The $5,000 is consumed by commuting, food, and clothing inside 90 days. You are not coming out ahead. And when an older worker tells you they had to do their time in the office, ask them the real question. Ask them what they got for it. Most of them, if they are honest, did not get a career trajectory. They got back problems and a long commute and a manager who couldn't tell their work apart from their attendance. The thing they are telling you is a virtue was punishment they survived. They are advocating you receive the same punishment because they cannot bear the idea that the punishment was not necessary, that they did it for nothing, that there might have been another way the whole time. That is not advice. That is hazing, exported across a generation. You do not have to accept the hazing. Refuse the hazing. The Boomer Elite section is short tonight because the rest of the script has been about them by implication, and I do not want to overplay it. But I want to say this much. If you are an executive over 60 who has been pushing return to office at your company, I want you to ask yourself a question I genuinely think most of you have not asked. What are you actually defending? Be specific. Is it productivity? The data says no. Is it culture? The data says it's mixed at best. The culture is built in many ways, and physical proximity is one variable among many. Is it your own comfort with the management style you learned in 1989? That one might be honest. Is it your building's lease? That one might also be honest. Is it your fear of becoming irrelevant in a world that increasingly does not require people in your chair to function? That one is probably the most honest. The answer to that fear is not to mandate the world come back to your chair. The answer is to evolve with the world, the way you would have demanded the people before you evolve when they were standing in your way. The world is not going to wait. You can be remembered as someone who tried to drag it backward for one more lease cycle, or you can be remembered as someone who recognized the shift and helped land it. Most of you will pick the first option, because the first option preserves quarterly numbers. Some of you will pick the second. The historical record will be kinder to those of you who picked the second. Although that is not why you should pick it. You should pick it because it's the right thing to do, which is a phrase I am aware has gotten complicated in modern American business, but which still applies. I want to end where I started, with the meeting, with the CEO and the timeshare expression and the 40-minute version of 9 honest words. The honest version of every return to office speech I have ever sat through is this. I have a building. The building is empty. I do not know how to manage you any other way than to see you. The empty building scares me. My friends are losing money on their buildings. Please come back so I can pretend the world has not changed. That is the speech. The rest is decoration. And the decoration is being mistaken by a lot of well-meaning younger workers for serious business analysis. It is not. It is the panic of a class of people who can feel their cultural and economic relevance slipping, dressed up in the language of mentorship and culture so that we will all nod and obey and shorten our lives commuting back to buildings we proved we did not need. We proved it. The data is in. The pandemic was the largest natural experiment in labor history, and the result was decisive for anyone honest. We do not need the building. We need each other in occasional doses with intention. We need leaders in the form of actual leadership and not the form of square footage. We need outcomes measured honestly. We need the future. They are trying to give us 1985 instead. The bullpen, the fluorescent lights, the performative attendance, the lifetime commute, the manager walking by your desk, the badge swipe, the whole museum exhibit restored. Refuse the exhibit. Negotiate against it in every interview. Choose the company that has figured it out over the company that has not. Tell the truth in surveys. Vote with your career mobility, which is the one piece of leverage we still have. And when an older worker, who is sometimes well-meaning and sometimes not, tells you that your generation needs to put in the office time, ask them why. Ask them for the data. They do not have it. They have nostalgia. Nostalgia is not a labor policy. Nostalgia is the wallpaper they are putting up on a building that has already been condemned. The next industrial revolution is here. They cannot stop it. They can only slow it. We can refuse the slowing. They lost the future. Now they want you to live in their past. Don't take the seat. Build the next one.